Hey people, TreeTopDuelist here, and today I'm bringing you another in-depth deck guide for Trinity Yugioh. If you've never heard of Trinity before, you can find an introduction to the format here. If you're interested in entering a tournament with real prizes, check the description below for a link to the monthly tournament hosted by Yugioh Pro Deck. Today we're pilfering not only Mono Blue Tron's series name, but also my first place list for hero control. There are multiple different hero builds out there, ranging all the way from Fusion OTK to Massed Hero Control. This build is a good mix of all the other elements, putting the unlimited elemental hero Stratos to good use in order to chew to anything we need to win. The deck can make Fusion Monsters as well as rank 4 Xyzs, and is very capable of throwing out massive damage from nowhere. Lots of people complain that Highlander decks just generally aren't very consistent, but by looking at this deck list we can immediately tell that that's not the case. From the start we've got a million cards that search each other, meaning that we'll always have a useful monster turn 1. The unlimited elemental hero Stratos plays a role in this deck, which not only searches but also generates a +1. On top of this, Armageddon Knight and Vision Hero Vion play a similar role. We can use them to mill one of our 2 Shadow Mists. Outside of Shadow Mist, we've obviously got Stratos, as well as 1 E-Emergency Call and a reinforcement of the army. All of these cards together give us amazing consistency for the deck. Every turn we can either generate a rank 4 or a plus. Foolish Burial and Armageddon Knight have the extra utility of milling our 1-off Shaddoll Dragon. Shaddoll Dragon may seem a little strange here as it's not typically seen in hero decks, but is one of my favourite techs for this format. We no longer have to play an MST in the deck, which is sometimes dead, especially against decks which opt not to play back row. This gives us even more flexibility for the deck, which is the main philosophy of this deck build. Every time I draw a card, I want to have lots of options for that card to win the game. I do not want a linear game plan with this deck, which is sadly how most hero decks in the TCG are built. Even if we draw into our Shaddoll Dragon, it's really not that dead. 1900 attack is quite a lot compared to most of the cards in this format, and normal setting it allows us to get around Xyz or Synchro monsters that our opponent might make on their turn. To add to the heroes that I've already mentioned, we're playing 1 Bubble Man, which is obviously amazing for rank 4s. It turns any of our search monsters like Stratos into a 1-card rank 4. We're also playing 1 Destiny Hero Decider. By normal summoning it, we can activate the effect, allowing us to add any hero from our grave to our hand in the end phase. It's like a warrior returning alive, which, hilariously, I do actually play 1 copy of. Generally, we'll try to add back a searcher like Shadow Mist, though I've also added back one of the 2 other cards that I'm about to talk about, since they're so powerful. Elemental Hero Honesty Neos and Vision Hero Witch Raider. It states that we can normal summon her using trap cards, which is a very weird mechanic, but generally I haven't needed to do this. The majority of the time I've used Call of the Haunted in my opponent's end phase to summon something like an elemental hero Stratos. His effect lets us add Witch Raider to our hand, so on our turn we can just tribute our Revival Trap and the Stratos to nuke their back row. Honesty Neos is honestly amazing. This card is such a strong card, and under no circumstance would I not play him. It makes our Stratos go up to 4300 attack on a normal summon, which makes Stratos the biggest boss buster of this deck. We can also Premature Burial back the Honesty Neos, and then maybe discard something like a Vision Hero Witch Raider to buff his attack even more. Lastly, the effect is used in the damage step, meaning that our opponent generally doesn't have an option to respond. Onto the fusions. Now, this deck really wasn't fusion focused, and the only fusions I'm playing I didn't really make too often. We're playing Elemental Hero The Shining, Nova Master and Absolute Zero, as well as 1 Starving Venom Fusion Dragon. This last one I'd probably cut, maybe for an Elemental Hero Escarado, but I'm not too sure since its effect is really sweet if we can pull it off. Most of these we make with Miracle Fusion, though we can use Polymerization, which is searchable by both Blazeman and Vion. Most of the time I just want to discard the poly for something like a Twin Twisters, if we don't have a Shadow Mist in hand to discard. However, 1 sneaky tech that we do play is Future Fusion. Future Fusion is a terrifying card because on our first standby phase after using it, we get a search with Shadow Mist, and on the second turn, we just suddenly get a big boss monster out of nowhere. Technically, we do play 1 last fusion monster, that is Elder Entity Norden. Norden, or Nodin, we can use with Instant Fusion as an instant rank 4. This is all pretty straightforward. Note that if we do Instant Fusion our Norden, we can then summon it back with a Revival Trap, making extra rank 4s very easy. Onto the rank 4s, we're playing a lot of them. Traptrix Rafflesia has won me a lot of games this tournament. In our main deck we're playing Bottomless as well as Floodgate Trap Hole, and in the extra deck I'm playing a Deep Dark Trap Hole, Space Time Trap Hole and Trap Hole of Spikes. Rafflesia has a lot of defense, meaning that just summoning it can save us for a lot of turns against OTK decks. Sometimes it does clog up the extra monster zone, but if our opponent isn't actually able to get over the Rafflesia, we probably don't want it out of the extra monster zone anyway. Next up on the rank 4s we have Abyss Dweller, Evil Swarm Xyz Knight, Castel, Tornado Dragon, Heartland Draco, who is really good at finishing our opponent if they're on low life points, 101 Silent Honorarch, Blade Armor Ninja for the OTKs, as well as Utopia and Utopia the Lightning. Due to all the revival traps we're playing, we can make Utopia the Lightning pretty easily. We just revive a monster on opponent's turn, search a monster, and on our turn we have 3 summons left to make the Lightning. All of our rank 4s give us different options. Tornado Dragon, 101, and Castel are obvious since they're very basic removal options. Xyz Knight is a threat that the opponents generally tend to fear, since they can't dedicate too much to the board without risking losing all of their cards. Finally, onto the big control element of the deck. When building this deck, I wanted to play a control deck. I wanted to control the game, and when I see an opening, be able to just smash Honestinios in their face and deal as much damage as possible. To do this, we needed a lot of control elements, which as you can see, we're playing a lot of. Torrential Tribute is one of the most played cards in the format. It's very powerful, being a dark hole that we can use on our opponent's turn. Solemn Strike, but not Solemn Warning, is also very good at just stopping our opponent's plays. I didn't really want to play Solemn Warning as I was scared of the high life point cost. I'm already playing Instant Fusion and Premature Burial, and in a lot of games I got down to very low life points to the point where something like a Solemn Warning was either dead or would have cost me the game. Mirror Force, as always, is very powerful, and Paleozoic Dinomischus can summon itself and be used as a fusion material for absolute 0. On top of this, we can also discard one of our 2 Shadow Mists, or something that we want in the graveyard, just to get rid of an opponent's card. Fiendish Chain adds to the attack negation power. A lot of the time I was kind of worried that my opponent's decks would be faster than mine, and as such I wanted lots of main deck measures to prevent ourselves from being OTK'd. As it turned out, this wasn't quite the case. Trinity is quite slow and isn't really such an OTK based format, but regardless, Fiendish Chain being able to permanently affect a monster on the board and negate its effects seemed to be very powerful. Lost Wind is another permanent negation card that we can use in the damage step. If you're playing any deck with traps, even if you're playing a graveyard deck that doesn't play many traps, I would highly advise playing Lost Wind. This card is so powerful. To round off the negation, we're playing 1 Breakthrough Skill, which is similar to the other 2 mentioned cards. For Trinities, we're playing the aforementioned Shadow Mist, as well as a Dark Hole and a Monster Reborn, which for this tournament were co-forbidden. Lots of people shun the idea of playing generic good cards, as they don't really add anything to the deck's power. However, I disagree. I feel that I've got enough main deck thinning to increase the consistency of drawing something like a Dark Hole or Monster Reborn to the extent where they become very, very powerful, consistent. Obviously you can't directly search either, but when you can thin your deck enough, you can increase the consistency of seeing either to a significant amount. Dark Hole being a massive board wipe is great, especially since our deck is very recursive. We can easily Dark Hole the board, and then summon something like a Stratos or whatever to start getting our plus engine running again. Hero Control is a deck which can not only interfere with the opponent's game plan, but can also provide a ton of offensive pressure with which to win the game. Whether you're new or already familiar with the format, I would extremely suggest testing it out. The deck's not only extremely fun to play, but is also amazingly powerful. Until next time, I'll see you in the tournament, and don't forget to stay groovy!